So you are able to see, right, the board.
Yes, sir.
So we'll start our this one. So now, if you remember, the last class, okay. So we have discussed, the fundamental equations and this viscoelastic things, okay. So this also we have discussed in our last class, okay. The why we discussed this viscoelastic thing, the main reason was, see, suppose if you want to solve the analytical methods, it's not so big deal, but when you want to try with numerical methods, okay. So then this becomes very, very important, okay. So now, as already we told, so generally viscoelasticity, okay. So you write in terms of convolution integrals. So this is how we write convolution integral will be there. But now convolution integral, representing it in in any numerical method is problematic. So what we tried, all our discussion, like last class discussion, was, so the stress strain relations, can we write in terms of ordinary differential equation. So this was our main the objective, okay. And I think finally we wrote our the equation also like this. So if you remember, so this was our equation. So our viscoelastic mediums. So sigma of t we write as some mu epsilon of t minus L is equal to 1 to n. Okay. So ml. So psi L of t kind of a thing. So these are what we are calling as some memory variables or anelastic functions. So they satisfy a differential equation. Okay. L of t plus omega L. So psi L of t, okay, is equal to some omega L into epsilon of t. So this is our constitutive equation for a viscoelastic material, and this is valid for your standard linear solids also, or Zener's body, or this one, okay. So why we do the standard linear solids? So last class we told, right, why do we require while runs from 1 to n, why do we require this? So many standard linear solids. So last class we told, right, why do we require?
To get a constant damping.
Fine. So to get a constant damping, okay. So you have to use this. Now how many, see, like for example, in when you are doing the seismic simulations, say, so this n may be sometimes 12, or this itself may be sufficient, or maybe you may have to calculate, okay, to get constant damping. You see how many terms has to be included, and it depends on your omega also. So if you want for high frequencies also, so then your n you have to increase, okay. So this is how so you have to use this standard linear solids. So finally, I think we also defined unelastic coefficients also. Sometimes, so here you have mu, then ml is there. So instead of mu and ml, say, sometimes in calculations we also write as ml by mu also. So this is what we are calling as unelastic coefficients. Okay. So same thing, only you are writing it in a different fashion. Okay, so there is nothing different. Okay, so if you want to write in terms of unelastic coefficients, so then your sigma of t, say, so this becomes a mu epsilon of t minus so sigma L is equal to 1 to n. So y L. So these are then your psi L of t. Okay, the same expression only. Instead of writing ml mu, you write as ml by mu kind of a thing. And then so you can find out this damping also, 1 by q of omega. This also I think we wrote in our last class. Okay, so sigma L is equal to 1 to n. So I think we already wrote omega L into omega plus omega L square. Okay, so q inverse of omega by you have some type of equations, okay, and some yl. Okay, so some equations you will have, and you can find out all the coefficients. Okay, so this is how we try to do. Now in 3 dimensions, say, in a 3D solid. Okay, so for 3D solid also you can write this constitutive equation similar fashion. Okay, so we have already told, right, our stress strain relations, so we can write as some bulk modulus epsilon kk delta ij, okay, plus 2 times mu epsilon ij minus 1 by 3 epsilon kk, say, okay, delta ij. So this is a stress strain relation in 3 dimensions. see, we write in terms of lambda mu, that is one alternative, that is a Lame's coefficient constants, or you can also write in terms of bulk modulus actually. So this is your bulk modulus and your mu. The advantage of this is, some advantage is there. So this is something like, hydrostatic kind of a thing. Okay, or pure normal, this is a pure volumetric strain kind of a thing, and this is your deviatory part. So sometimes, some times you can write like this, or you can use your classical this itself. So now this is valid for elastic body. Okay. Now we have to write for viscoelastic medium. What happens? So now in a 3D solid, because isotropy and all those things, finally you have only two things only are there. One is bulk modulus or shear modulus or lambda mu, Lame's constant. So two things only will be there. So now you can write the same expression in terms of those coefficients itself. So we write like this. So sigma ij say. So you can write this as this k bulk modulus epsilon kk delta ij. So you have this 2 mu, the elastic part, epsilon ij minus 1 by 3 epsilon kk and the delta ij. So this is the elastic part, plus you have now the unelastic part actually. So sigma L is equal to 1 to n. Okay. So YLK, so these are the coefficients actually. Okay, unelastic coefficient and your bulk modulus, and your L. So these are the coefficients for bulk modulus. Okay, delta Ij plus so you have 2 mu this one, and of course mu multiplied by Ij. Okay, minus you see 1 by 3 Kk delta Ij. Okay. So this is the expression you see. So these are the extra terms which comes in your viscoelastic body. Now these are two constants you say. Okay. So these are unelastic coefficients. Okay. So now you have two unelastic coefficients here. So one is with respect to the bulk modulus, other one is with respect to this shear modulus. Okay, so two unelastic coefficients are there. Okay, now of course all these terms are there say. So these whatever these terms, they should satisfy your ordinary differential equation. So that can be written as dou by dou t ij of t plus omega L ij of t. So this will be equal to omega L into epsilon ij of t. Okay, so where L is equal to 1 to n. So these are the coefficients here. Okay, so now you can see. So this is how we write our equation in 3 dimensions for this viscoelastic medium. So now here if you see the number of unknowns, see how many unknowns are there here. Total number of unknowns. See, total number of unknowns you have anyway, 1 is there here, 2 is there here. So in elastic body, so you have only 2 unknowns are there. But if it is a viscoelastic body, say, apart from this 2 things, you should have you should know this also. That is unelastic coefficient for bulk modulus, unelastic coefficient for the shear modulus. Then you also should know these constants actual. And now how many strains are there in 3D? Yeah. How many strains are there? Epsilon ij. How many are there? Strains. How many strains? 6 strains are there. Okay. So for EA, so 6 strains are there. So you will be having you followed right. So 6 constants will be there. So there will be 6 this expressions also ij's. Okay. So psi L11 you followed right. Psi L12 psi L13. So like this you have 6 components are there. Now apart from that, so 6, and if there are n standard linear solids are there, say. Okay. So if you have taken n standard linear solids, n solids you have taken, then you will be having 6 times n this these coefficients. Okay, and then 2 times n you have for each solid for this unelastic this one. Okay, so these many you followed right, unknowns will be there for a viscoelastic medium. Okay, so these are the some extra terms which comes up in unelastic medium apart from your ordinary the shear bulk modulus and then this shear modulus itself. So this way you can solve for all the coefficients. So sometimes in velocity stress formulations, if you are not using displacement stress formulation, if you are writing in terms of velocities, say, then you can also just write this constitutive equation using so dou by dou t, so sigma ij. Okay, so the same expression you followed, right? So dou by dou t, so epsilon kk. Okay, so delta ij plus 2 mu. Okay, so dou by dou t epsilon ij minus 1 by 3 dou by dou t. Okay, epsilon kk delta ij. Okay, minus sigma L is equal to 1 to n. Okay, so you have YLK and this bulk modulus is here, then psi L kk and delta ij plus you have so 2 times is YL mu and then mu psi L ij, okay, minus 1 by 3 psi L kk, so delta ij. So just replace your psi with this this psi itself, and this psi has to satisfy your ordinary differential equation. So dou by dou t psi L ij of t plus omega L psi L ij of t is equal to omega L. So dou by dou t of your strain tensor. Okay, so this way also you can write this. Both are same expressions only. Here it is a strain versus stress actual. So sigma ij versus strains, which is how we have written this expression. Okay, now what we are doing is we are writing in terms of is a derivative of the with respect to time of your strain. This will help in velocity stress formulations. Okay, in finite difference I told you, right, you can use a displacement stress or velocity stress formulation, say one can do like this. And now alpha, say, that is your p wave velocity. Okay, or this you can already all of that is root of mu by rho kind of a thing. So this is your bulk modulus by rho, say. So this we call as the p wave velocity. Okay, suppose if you want to write in terms of the Lamar's constants, we write this as lambda plus 2 mu by rho. Okay, so both are same. Here you are writing in terms of bulk modulus and shear modulus, or this one. Now you have shear wave velocity also, which we define as mu by rho. Okay, so this is what we call as the shear wave velocity and the p wave velocity also sometimes. So these are generally reported here, and generally we also report in our the people report routine from the data set, damping of p wave, damping of the shear wave. So these things are widely reported. Okay, so damping, then alpha, then beta, so they will be reported from the data, not only for in seismology, but even when they do experiments. So these things can be measured. How much is the velocity of a p wave, how much is the velocity of a shear waves, and what is the damping for p wave, what is the damping for shear wave. So these things are measured in practice. So now you have to obtain these things. But our viscoelastic equations, say, they are written in terms of these anelastic coefficients. That is YL of k, then YL of mu. You followed. So now you are having, you see, all these terms are there. Okay. So now so this has to be the found out. Just 1 second. Now, so now so this has to be estimated. So now for that so we can estimate from this expressions, that is q inverse, say. Okay, some gamma if you take, so gamma can be p wave or it can be s wave itself. So sigma L is equal to 1 to n, so omega L omega k plus omega L square, so q gamma minus omega k by, you see, omega L square plus omega this k square, and you have this gamma, I think y, this is sorry, so this is y, so you have L and this is gamma, so where k can up to 2n minus 1, and your this gamma, say, so this belongs to alpha or beta actually. So you have one equation for p wave, one equation for shear wave. So if you substitute gamma is equal to alpha, you will get one set of equations for p waves, other set of equations for this one, and then this anelastic coefficient, say y l k. Okay, so they can be estimated by this method, alpha square, so YL alpha, so 4 by 3, so you have beta square, So YL of beta by alpha square minus 4 by 3 beta square. Okay, so this is for the anelastic coefficients associated with your bulk modulus. Now the anelastic coefficients associated with shear. So this will anyway will be same actually. Okay, whatever you report, you see automatically it will be same, and of course L runs from 1 to n. Okay, so these are basically a system of equations. So what we do in practice is, so in reality, what people know is alpha beta will be given to you. Okay, p wave velocity or longitudinal wave velocity, beta, and then damping for the p wave, damping for this. So that you will get from this from the experiments or data. Okay, so these are from like ultrasonic testing. There are several tests are there, so we can get all these four numbers. Based on these four numbers, now you have to find out all these parameters, anelastic coefficients, all these quantities are required. So these are the relationships between both of them. So using these relations, you can find out all these constants, and once you know all the constants, say, you can simply everything about that material also. Okay, so sometimes, as already I told you, you can write the same stress strain relations. Say we have written in terms of bulk modulus and mu. You can also write in terms of Lame's constants also. Both of them are same. Okay, whichever is way you can write. So like Lame's constants is say. So sigma ij. So in the velocity stress formulation, so dou by dou t epsilon kk say delta ij plus 2 mu dou epsilon ij by dou t. Okay, so minus you have for the extra viscoelastic terms will come. L is equal to 1 to n. So YL, okay, of your lambda. So lambda psi L kk, then delta ij plus 2 times z. So YL mu psi psi L ij. Okay, so we write like this. So you can see, so this is how the extra you followed it. You the same equations only. Now instead of writing in terms of bulk modulus and shear modulus, you can write in terms of the two Lame's constants itself. Okay, so both the ways you can solve this problem. So here also same unknowns are same. So these are two, this one, then you have to solve this one. So you have a differential equation where you can get this coefficients. See now, see what is the main advantage of all these differential equations? Like when you wrote the constitutive relations for viscoelastic material, you remember we wrote as minus infinity to t some psi t minus tau epsilon dot tau d tau. This is how we wrote the viscoelastic material. Now if you write it in ordinary differential equations, okay, so you will get a beautiful you followed. So you can, this is the equation for viscoelastic material. So instead of a convolution, you can write in terms of like this. See now what is the main advantage of this type of equations? Can you point out when you look at this equation? See what is the speciality? Like if I write like this, the main advantage is what's the main advantage here?
Differentiation is there, so we can solve in finite difference.
That is fine, but if you look at this equation, say, if you look at this convolution, you cannot make out actual. Okay, so because here when you write like this, what you told is fine, that numerical implementation is fine. Another advantage is, what is the first portion? This portion.
Elastic.
So this is elastic actual. Okay, so you can nicely separate your the stress strain relation into two pieces. One is elastic portion, other one is unelastic portion. So which you can't do it in a convolution integral. So here elastic and unelastic, so both of them are intermixed kind of a thing. You can't separate both of them. But here the main advantage is you can write like this, and of course you can write in terms of OD. That is also the main advantage. Okay. So anyway, we'll close this constitutive. We will come back to this after some point. Okay. So now let us go to for our numerical methods. Okay, so now let us see our finite difference method, how we try to solve our problems. Okay, so now I think everything is ready. You followed it. So we know how to represent viscoelastic medium, and we know the basic equations of motion also. So now let us solve by this numerical methods, how people solve like this. So the classical thing, which is the oldest numerical methods, is this finite difference. Okay. So finite difference method, you know, it does strong form equations only. Okay, so there is no, it will not use any weak form equations. Okay, directly we work on our strong form equations itself. That is the main advantage of this finite difference method itself. Okay, and it is very straightforward, you know, way to solve any ordinary differential equation or partial differential equation, say. So the classical way or the easiest way is, you know, this finite difference method only. Finite element and other things are little bit, you know, complicated kind of a thing, because, you know, we have to write the equation of motion in a weak form or integral weak form, you know, other you know, the basis functions, you know, what are the polynomials you are using, so many things it comes into picture. But in finite difference it is all straightforward. Okay, so you use a strong form, then you know, you use a Taylor series expansion to represent your ODEs into difference equations to convert. Okay, so now if you are having a Cartesian coordinate system, say, no. So if you are having you know, a Cartesian coordinate system, so that is you know, in 3D. So you have x, y, then z, and then time also. It is a 4 dimensions. Okay, so 4D system you have. This is your computational domain. Okay. So now what we try to do in finite difference is, first thing is, you know, you have to divide your, you have to form a grid. Okay, so there is no mesh here. So in finite difference you have you know, something like a grid. So what is meant by a grid? A grid is just a set of you know, a discrete actual, okay, space-time points. Okay, so this we call as a grid. So what we try to do is, you know, so your x, y, z, comma t, say. Okay, so this is your continuous thing. We just you know, write as, you know, x I or x L. Okay, then y k, sorry, x I we will write. So this is x I, y k, then z L, then t M. So we discretize it into points. So where your I, k, L, then M. Okay, so small m. So they all belong to, you know, so 0, 1, 2, like this. Okay, so these are our grid points. So your x I, say, we can write this as, if you know the origin, we can write as I times, you see, delta x, you know, delta x I. Now similarly, say your x y k, sorry, so your y k can be written as, you see, y naught into, so your k times, you see, delta y k. Okay, and your z L, say, so this can be written as z naught plus L times delta zl. Okay, similarly time domain also. So tm is equal to, you know, t naught plus m times, you know, delta. Okay, so this is how you know, we write our things. So this is delta xi, say. Okay, and delta, you know, yk and delta zl. Okay, so they are nothing but is the grid spacings. So we call them as grid spacing, or sometimes, you know, the spatial increments. Okay, and your delta t, say, this is your time step. So this is the first step actual. So if you are having any function, say, okay, so if you are having any function, we write like this in the finite difference, xi, yk, then you know, zl and tm. So this is how we write it in you know, in finite difference. Or sometimes you say, you know, instead of writing in terms of x, y, z and this thing, sometimes we directly write as, you know, like this also. Or to make it simplification, so we also write this as, time is denoted on the top subscript kind of a thing, where your spatial, say, is in your so, you know, so subscripts. This is your superscript. So this indicates your time, whereas these indicates, say, they indicate your spatial increments. Okay, so this is a notation, you see, we will be following in this course, and in all the textbooks also, so they follow the same notation itself. Sometimes they also write like this, IKL kind of a thing. So generally, you know, you have to assume that the superscript is, you know, related to time, and the subscripts, say, they are related to space itself. Okay, so this is how we represent any functions in finite difference methods. Okay, now here, you know, there are several ways are there to form a grid. One is what we call as a uniform grid. Okay. So uniform grid means, you know, you take delta xi is equal to delta yk is equal to, so delta zl say, all are same actual. Okay, so the grid distance between 2 points in x direction, y direction, z direction, if all of them are same say, so this we call as, you see, a uniform grid. Okay, now of course this is the most easiest one, and you can solve your equations, there is no confusion, it will be very very easy. But sometimes in many problems, this uniform grid, computational difficulties will be more. Sometimes we also go for this non-uniform grid source. We will see later on where you may have to use this non-uniform grid also. Okay, so like when you are dealing with different heterogeneous materials, say. Okay, it is not a homogeneous kind of a thing, heterogeneous, or maybe you see metal properties are changing. There are many cases are there, or maybe you have a topography, or you may have a variety cases. Then maybe non-uniform grids will be much more you follow it easy, and they may reduce the computational power also sometimes. Okay, of course it is a case by case, you have to see each and everything. But generally, so if you are doing any simple problem, uniform grid is sufficient. But if you are solving some complicated things, so then by case basis, you have to verify whether you have to go for non-uniform grid or not. Okay, so this we will see followed right after some time. Okay, and now similarly say, so now we have one, and the most important thing is the space-time location. This will create second one, the space-time locations. Okay, of field variables, we say. This also gives you so many the grids. See, like for example, in the classical finite difference, they use this type of diagrams. Okay, a cube. So this is in space. Okay, so this is a classical in finite difference, they indicate like this. Okay, so this is a cube, they say. Let us say here are all are squares. So so now let us say you have a displacement formulation, say. Okay, let us say for example displacement formulation. Okay, so every means all equations are in terms of displacements. So now at each grid point you have ux, uy and uz. So at all the grid points, so the superscript indicates time. Okay, whereas your subscript, say, this indicates the spatial increment. So now so this is what we call, as you followed it, a conventional grid generally. So at all the points in the grid, the displacements are defined kind of a thing. So this we call, as you see, display conventional grid itself. Now suppose if you are using a velocity stress formulation, say. Okay, that means you have velocity and you have stress also. So this equation if you are solving, and then you have like this. Okay, the grid. Okay, so let us say you have a grid like this. So now since it is a velocity stress formulation, say, so you have velocity equation also and you have a stress equation also. Okay, and let us say you have taken h everywhere, this one, and at each grid point, so you have defined velocities. Okay, vx of m, vy of m, then we have vz of m, then you have the stresses also, the normal stresses, then the shear stresses also. Okay, m, then you have sigma zz m, and then you have the shear stress components also. Okay, xy, xz, then yz. Okay, so at all the points we are defining as velocities and as well as the stresses also, both the shear as well as the normal stresses. So this is known as, you see, collocated grid. Okay, collocated grid. So these is how they are defined. And now we define, you see, partially staggered grid. So staggering, we say. Okay, so partially staggered grid. So this grid is you followed it, a special kind of grids are there. Okay, so this is something like this. Okay, so you have a say that 3D cube you have to draw. Okay, so here what we do is, so here we am putting circles here. Okay, and the centers I am putting another thing here. Okay, so now we are putting like this. this one, and you followed, right? So this points like this. So this is another grid. So this inside one, say, so we are indicating some other filled circle kind of a thing here. Okay. So now at the open circles, we define velocity m plus 1 by half, then vy m plus 1 by half. Okay, and then you see vz. So m plus half vz. Okay. Now this closed filled circle, say. So here we are defining, you see, the stresses m. So sigma yy of m, then sigma zz of m, and then your shear stresses also are defined at this place. Okay. Okay. So what does it tells you? What is the meaning of this one? Tell me. So what does it tells you?
We are reducing a number of unknowns of velocities at all points. Instead of calculating at all points, we are calculating at some of the points.
No, velocities are calculated at all the points. See here. So velocity is calculated here, velocity is calculated here. So at all the points, you are calculating the velocity. Okay. But in time, what are you doing? You are calculating m plus half actually. So now, whereas stresses where you are calculating stresses in the full cube, say you are calculating stress only at one point only.
Center.
Okay. At the center, the normal stresses as well as shear stresses, and this is in space. Now in time also, which is ahead? Velocity is ahead or stresses are ahead?
So velocity is
Is
ahead of
ahead
stress.
actually, ahead of stress. Okay. So this is one type of grid. So this type of grid we call as, you see, partially staggered grid. Now why we require this partially staggered grid? The reason is, we will discuss after some time, because of stability issues comes up. Okay, that is the advantage. You see, people use this type of grid itself. Then now the last one, so which is the wide one, which is widely used nowadays, is this staggered grid. Okay. So staggered, you followed it, not partially, fully staggered grid kind of a thing. So here the grid is like this. Okay. So these are how they represent. So let us say I'm putting one triangle here, then here also one more triangle, but this is filled triangle. Both are different. Okay. So here also one circle is here. You followed, right? Something like this. And here you have one circle which is closed circle. Okay. Here you have a open circle. Then you have a open square kind of a thing. Then you have filled square here. Okay. So this is a special grid actually. So now this filled circle, filled square, that is this portion essentially. Okay. So here we define velocity in one direction only. Okay. So this case, say, the filled one, that is this place. Okay. So we are defining velocity in other direction. Okay. Now this circle, say filled circle, this portion. So here we are defining another velocity, m plus half. Okay. Now the open circles are there. Say now this place, that is this place, we are defining, you see, all the normal stresses m, and this is sigma zz of m. Okay. Now here, say this open circle is there, right? So near the open circle we are defining sigma xy m, and the open this triangle, say. So here we are defining a sigma yz of m. Then we have another open circle. So here we are defining this sigma zx of m. Okay. So now you can see here how the grid is looking like here. See here you are defining sigma zx. Here you are defining sigma yz, and here you are defining where is the other one? Open circle is here. Okay. Open square. So now here you are defining all the normal stresses. So that is these stresses you are defining here. Okay. So I think this is sorry. No, this I think I made a mistake here. So this is your triangle. Okay. No, so this one is your shear stress. So here you are defining this stresses. Okay. And now how the grid is looking like. What's the speciality of this grid here?
Staggered.
What is that it indicates? What is the staggering meaning? What is the staggering meaning of staggering? What is it?
Properties are spread across different vertices.
Different vertices. See, suppose if you are calculating velocity at 0 meters, say some 0, okay, so stresses are not calculated at the same point actually. So stresses are calculated at some other point, and now in stresses also all normal stresses are calculated at one point. Why normal stresses all of them are calculated at one point? Because right, normal stresses are all epsilon ia kind of a thing. So normal stresses are calculated at one point. Shear stresses sigma xy, sigma yz, sigma zz, they are calculated at different points. Then apart from that, your velocities, they are ahead in time actually. Okay, they are ahead in time compared to your shear stresses. So this type of grids are known as a staggered grid actually. So now in the classical things, so now these type of grids, the main advantage is your memory can be less actually. You follow? So you can use the less memory kind of a thing, and it is something like efficient, they say. See, suppose in the classical mesh, say what is here happening here? How many unknowns are there here? If you see here, you have 3 velocities and 6 stresses are there. So total 9 are there. Okay. So now how many are there? Now at each and every grid point, you are having 9. So how many grid points are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So how many unknowns are there? 9 8s are 72. You followed, right? Unknowns are there here. Now when you do partial staggered or staggered grids, how many unknowns are there here? Now, see, like for example, you see you are having 1 here, then you followed, right, 2 here, then a very less number of 9 only are there. You understand? So now so this is something like you followed, right, to less decrease your memory size, and maybe you followed, right. Some other advantages also are there in numerical stabilities also. Okay, so stability issues also you can do it in the fashion actually. Okay, so this type of grids are very, very popular, and this type of grids are the one which are widely used in practice. The conventional things, defining each and everything at every point, people doesn't use those type of grids. So this one has to know in finite difference, the starting thing is what type of grid you are using. Okay, so this generally, if you see any paper or any software says, so they define like this. Okay, staggered grid, what that software does, staggered, or whether it's a partially staggered, this one. So all of them will give you the same result. Only thing is, in terms of stability or in terms of performances, maybe you may get different results kind of a thing. Okay, so this you followed it. You should know this is a very, very important type of grids actually. Of course, you can define in terms of time, but in space, so this is the one, and the staggered one is the widely preferred. Okay. So finally, you followed it. The widely used is the staggered grid. Okay, so this is the one which is widely preferred because of memory issues and all other things. So it is a widely used grid. It in is finite difference. Okay. Now let us see our how do we represent in terms of finite difference. So as already I told you, the finite difference starts with this Taylor series. Very, very easy and very, very straightforward, this finite difference. Okay, so all of if we are having f of x plus h, you would have already studied in your undergraduate also. So you can write as h into phi dash of x plus half h square, so phi double dash of x, and you can write your Fourier series, this the Taylor series 1 by 6 h cube phi triple dash of x. And of course, you have this higher order terms of fourth order. Okay, so this is how the Taylor series they looks like. So now we can write, you see, the Taylor series. So if you write for phi dash x, okay, so phi dash x, you can pull this side and you can make adjustments here and there. You can write this as 1 by h phi of x plus h, say, minus phi of x. Okay, so minus half h into phi double dash of x. Minus 1 by 6, okay, h square phi triple dash of x, minus order of the h cube, because 1 by h has come into picture because of this portion. Okay, so which case, so you can define your first order forward approximation. So this we generally call as forward derivative or something. So we define this as so dx of f. So this is our notation for forward derivative. So phi of x. Okay, so we write as 1 by h. So phi of x plus h minus phi of x. Okay, so this is our how the forward derivative is thing. So now if you want to try to compute your error, say between this one and this one, so the error is of what is the order of the error? No. So now we have taken only this portion only. Okay, so we have ignored all other portions. So now the next term is you followed it h. So the order error is of the order of the h. Okay, in the forward derivative. Now similarly, say you can even find out the backward derivative also. So this is straightforward. I will not go into these things. So what is the for backward derivative? All of know it's a 1 by h into phi of x minus phi of x minus h. So this is your backward derivative. And here also, so the order of the derivative is so if you want to write, say the error. Okay, so this also is a phi dash x plus order is you followed it of the order h only. Okay, so these for the backward derivative. Now you can find out the central derivative also, the central difference. Okay, so for this you followed, you require the Taylor series expansion for x plus h also. Then you also should write the Taylor series expansion for x minus h also. Okay, then you can write the derivative. Okay, so we write this as so dx. So phi of x, say. So this can be the central derivative is 1 by 2 times h, phi of x plus h minus phi of x minus h. Okay, so this is our central derivative, and one can show that the central derivative, so the central difference. Okay, so what's the error order? No. So what will be the order of h square will come? Okay, because you would have subtracted phi dash, that term goes away. So phi double dash and other comes, phi double dash term gets cancelled, and you will be left with phi triple dash, and h square will be its order actual. Okay, and one can also show that your central derivative, say, is nothing but half of average of your forward derivative and then backward derivative also. Okay, so this also one can show. Okay, so this is your forward and backward derivative. Now sometimes you can use a higher order also. The higher order also you can derive higher order equations also. Say like for example, say now to compute the first order derivative for forward derivatives, how many points are required? So you require the functional points at phi of x as well as phi of x plus h, 2 points only. You followed, right? And here for backward derivative also 2 points, and for central derivative also, so you should just know phi of x plus h and phi of x minus h, 2 points itself. So to compute a derivative at a point, say you require x plus h, x minus h and x plus h actual. Okay, so 2 points are required. So sometimes you followed it, you can if you want a better results, you can go for even higher order approximations also. That means you can include more number of points. You followed. So this also you can try. Okay, so I will not go into the details. So like for example, say to compute the first order derivative. Okay, so if you go for 4 points, so you can also write this as 1 by h, so some 9 by 8 phi of x plus you see half h minus phi of x minus half times h. Okay, so this is 1 minus 1 by 24 phi of x plus 3 by 2 times h. Okay, minus phi of x minus 3 by 2 times h. Okay, so this is also another way, okay, of solving the problems. So here you have used how many points?
4.
4 points. For 4 points. Now this will give you much better result. So the order, so here the error order will be h square, sorry, h to the power of 4. So these order of this equation. So now which means, you know, you are for computing the derivative at a particular point, say, you are using many points set. So this point also you are using, this point also you are using, and this point and this point actual. Okay. So if you include more number of terms, then you can decrease your error itself. So this is generally, you know, what we call as, you followed it, the fourth order accurate approximation. Okay. So it is like a fourth order approximation. But the only problem is, you know, you should require, you follow, the more number of points are required to calculate this derivatives. So now, so this is how we can calculate, and similarly, so you can calculate for higher derivatives also. Okay. So that anyway, you know, we can do it this one. So like for example, say, okay, you can write it in a format also. You know, say like for example, the second derivative. Okay, the central phi. So you can write this as, you know, 1 by h square phi, you know, I minus 1 minus minus is 2 times phi is, okay, plus phi, you know, I plus 1. So this is the second derivative. Now similarly, so you can do, you know, all kinds of derivative itself. So there are some, you know, empirical formulas are there which you can you know, use it, and then you can write for the second derivative, third derivative, fourth derivative, and then you see you can do for as many derivatives as you can. You can replace them with these type of difference equations. Okay. So now if you take for a harmonic wave set, so this is a very, very important case. So if we are having any harmonic wave, so how do we represent in finite difference? So phi, so you have a time, then you have space in one dimensions. You remember we wrote as I into omega t minus kx. Okay, so this is our harmonic, you know, the wave. How do you represent this wave in finite difference? So this becomes, you know, exponent. So I into omega into m into delta minus, you know, k into I into h. Okay, so this is how we represent a harmonic wave in finite difference. So now you can find out its a derivative also. So dx, you know, the first derivative, say phi I of m. Okay, so what will be the first derivative? So you have to do, so that this you have to do it in a central difference method. So in central difference, what is the first derivative? No. So you should require, you remember, phi of x plus h, then phi of x minus h. So you just substitute, say. So now they are calculating the derivative with respect to space. We are not touching the time itself. Okay, so x plus h you substitute, and then x minus h actual. Okay, so you will get your derivative itself. So this can be written as, you see, 1 by h e to the power of minus I k h by 2. Okay, minus, you know, e to the power of, you know, I k h by 2. Okay, multiplied by the same phi L of m actual. So these are derivative, you know, of your plane waves in finite difference method. It's just a straightforward substitution. Only you have to substitute, you know, x plus h, and then you know, x minus h itself. So this is only the spatial one. So time thing is not going to change. So you will get an expression, you see, like this. And if you try to summarize, you know, simplify this expression, so you can also write this as minus I into, so 2 by h sine, you know, sorry. So 2 by h here. So sine, you see, k into h by 2. Okay. So phi L of m actual. Okay. So these are also you can write this derivative. So these how, you know, we represent this, you know, for the plane waves in terms of, you know, this finite difference expressions. Now you can even calculate, you see, to second derivative. So you can also write like this 2 times. Okay, so once again your difference in, say, you substitute in this finite difference equation, so it happens to be minus 2 by h sine, you know, kh by 2. Okay, so this entire expression whole square, so phi L m. Okay, so the property is very, very interesting property. So if you want to do 2 times, say, so everything remains the same, only thing is, you know, square comes up. 3 times means, you know, the power 3 comes, 4 times, you know, the power of 4 comes into the picture itself. Okay, so this is a one very important thing we will use in our dispersion or stability analysis later on. Okay, now another most important thing here is, you know, in the finite difference schemes. So there are several schemes are there. Okay, so like for example, if we are having any equation, say, so dou phi by dou t, Suppose if you are having any equation like this, okay, some simple equation is there. So here also there are several ways are there to implement this one. See, one is we call as forward in time, backward in forward in time and space. Okay. So you are having a time derivative, you are having a space derivative. So we write forward derivative in time, forward derivative in space. That means, we write this expression as 1 by delta. So phi L, m plus 1 minus forward derivative. We are using, to calculate this final difference. So this is equal to, so A into 1 by H. Okay. So phi L plus 1 m minus phi L m. Okay. So in time also you are having a forward derivative. In space, say, on the right hand side, here also you are taking a forward derivative. So this we call as a forward in time and space. Now you can also do forward in space, okay, or forward in time, backward in space. Space. So the equation will be like this. So 1 by delta, okay. So phi L m plus 1 minus phi L of m. So this will be A into 1 by H. Okay. So phi I m. I think I itself. Okay, follow. I think I made a mistake there. Notation was I. So phi I minus you see phi m I minus 1. Okay. So you can see here. So now. So you can see, so now here what is happening in time, say you are taking a forward derivative in time m plus 1 minus m, but in space you are taking a backward derivative actually. So I and I minus 1. So this is what we call as a forward in time and backward in space itself. The another case is forward in time, then centered in space. Okay, so this is another way. So you take a forward derivative in time, but in space you take a central derivative. So here we write as some phi I m plus 1 minus phi I say of m. So this is a forward derivative in time. Now in space we are taking a central derivative. So which is your phi I plus 1 m minus phi m I minus 1. Okay. So you have a derivative, you see, like this. So you are having a forward derivative in time, but in space it is a a central derivative here. So this is another way of writing the things itself. Then you have one more scheme here. So this is one way, like your what derivative you are using in time, what derivative you are using it in the space itself. Now if you take a central derivative, say, okay, so which is centered in time as well as on space, both time and space itself. So then you follow, right? We write this as so in time also you are taking a central derivative, in space also it is a central derivative, say, okay. So the equation becomes like this. So 1 by 2 times delta. So phi you have I, so m plus 1 minus phi I m minus 1. So this will be a 1 by 2 times h. Then you see your phi I plus 1. So you have m minus your phi m I minus 1 actually. Okay, so this is like a central derivative. So in time also central derivative, in space also it is a central derivative. So this type of techniques are known as leapfrog schemes. Okay. So there are variety you follow, right? People use actually. Then you can have all kinds of the combinations, and this is the one which is widely used or in the finite difference approaches. Okay, like as I told you, right, the staggered grid is one thing which is widely used it in the practice. The other one which is also widely used in the practice is this leapfrog schemes. So these type of schemes are something like what type of derivatives you are using actually. So now you can calculate a derivative with a forward derivative you have, backward derivative you have, and you have a central derivative also. So now which derivative you are going to use it in space, which derivative you are going to use it in time, so that matters a lot. So you can have you follow, right? So to represent the derivative, say, so you have having three cases: forward derivative, backward derivative, central derivative. Now you are having a time and space actually. So you can play forward in time, forward in space or forward in time, backward in space, you followed, or backward in time, backward in space, or central in time, central in space. So variety combinations you can do in finite difference approach. And the one which is widely used is this leapfrog scheme, which means you are doing you see a central derivative in time as well as in the space itself. Okay, so this is a very important the thing which we use it in the finite difference. So in finite difference also say, so mostly to compute all the derivatives, instead of using forward derivative or a backward derivative, we will be using this the central derivative itself, or it is also known as leapfrog scheme itself. So where you are using central derivative in time as well as in the space itself. Okay, so like this there are many other variety schemes are available, but this is the one which is widely used it in the practice. Okay, so this also one more important thing you have to find out. And now coming to this finite difference approaches. So there are one has to know some important things okay, before we do this one. So the first thing is what we call as, you see, the consistency. Okay, so consistency is basically, you followed, right? It is defined as any scheme, say, so any finite difference scheme, okay, is consistent actually. Okay, so with the exact the solution, with the exact equation you followed. So the difference is so limit your h tends to 0 and delta tends to 0. That means in space as well as this one. So the exact equation you have and your finite difference equation, say, so this has to go towards 0. So when you keep on reducing this h and delta, so your exact equation, whatever your equation you are having, then the finite difference approximation of that equation, so both of them goes to 0. So then we call that as, you see, a consistent the approach itself. Okay, so this is the one thing. Now next one is stability. So this is a very important thing in with respect to time. Okay, generally stability means everything is defined in terms of time. So you all know, right? So if you are getting a solution like this, say, okay, this type of solutions actually, so these are like, you see, unbounded kind of a thing. Okay, so unbounded solutions you have. So these are stability issue. So there are a variety cases are there. Okay, so conditionally stable, unconditionally stable, many cases are there. So conditionally stable, then unconditionally stable, we will be using all these type of words. Okay, so unconditionally stable, then you can have conditionally unstable. So this also you can have unconditionally unstable. So variety things are there, but generally please remember that stability is it has to do something with respect to time. So you should never get these type of unbounded solutions. Okay, because errors keeps on cropping up, so these issues comes up. So these type of things are what we call as, you see, unstable kind of a solution. So this also, so how to select your delta, how to select your h, how to select your the spatial increment and time increments. So you have to choose based on all these criteria. So stability is one very important thing, and other, of course, the most important thing is the convergence also. Okay, so you have solved using a finite difference approach, say. Okay, so now you know the exact solution, and then you try to find out from the finite differences, say. So here also we say, so limit h tends to 0, delta tends to 0. So you have exact solution. So if I denote the exact solution like this, and your finite differences, say, is your I comma k comma l kind of a thing. So this is if it goes to 0. So then we call which we say that your finite difference things has converged actually. Okay, so convergence is related to the final answer, whereas the consistency is related to your original equation itself. Okay, what is order of that equation or something that we call as consistency. Both are entirely different. Then the last one is you followed, right, this grid dispersion. These are most the important thing. So here also, as already we told, stability is related to time, say. This dispersion, of course, it is related to time and space also, but generally it is more or less related to, you see, the space. So your spatial, the increments. Okay, the spatial increments. See, like the phase velocity of the waves, say. So like you are having, the waves are having some phase velocity, Now when you do this discretization, then automatically you are having you are incorporating some type of an error. So the phase velocity exact, okay, and in your final difference grid velocity, we say the grid phase velocity. So they will be entirely different itself. So so this dispersion has to be avoided. So anyway, this grid dispersion is basically your spatial the points, how many spatial points you have to include such that your exact phase velocity will be same as the grid you see the space velocity itself. Okay, so this also is a very the important you see the parameter. So in our final difference to select our spacing, that is your delta, then to select our H, say, okay, so these two you have to follow these 4 procedures. One is consistency, okay, stability, then you have this convergence, and you have this dispersion. So 4 things have to be satisfied. So you have to select your delta, then H and other things based on this 4 the criterions. Okay, so these are most the important thing in our final difference approaches. Okay, so this is how we try to solve our thing. So now so as already I told you in finite difference, when you want to solve in our continuum mechanics, I think long back itself we have said actual. Okay, so now you can start with the displacement stress formulations. You remember, so already we wrote in the first class. Okay, so this is one formulation where I am writing in 1 dimensions. So you solve these equations, dou sigma by dou x, and sigma is equal to m into dou u by dou x. So this is what we call as a displacement stress formulation itself. Then you have displacement formulation also, where everything is written in terms of displacement itself. Okay, so but the order is we have long back itself we have seen it is a second order equation. Dou square u by dou t square is equal to your c square, say dou square u by dou x square kind of a thing. Then we have displacement velocity stress contribution also. Stress the velocity formulation also we have. Okay, so where we write all the expressions. So rho into dou v by dou t is equal to dou sigma by dou x. Then we have v is equal to dou u by dou t. Then we have sigma is equal to m into dou u by dou x. So this also is one other formulation is there. Or sometimes you see the velocity stress, which is the one which we will be going to use in this course, and which is the widely used actually, velocity stress. Okay, so this also is another formulation. So we write rho into dou v by dou t is equal to dou sigma by dou x. I am writing in 1 dimension, but you can write it in the 2 dimensions itself. So dou sigma by dou t is equal to m into dou v by dou x. Okay, so these are the variety formulations which are available in our finite difference. So as already I told, which is the widely used? I think long back itself we have discussed, right? What is advantage? What's the disadvantage?
Velocity stress.
Why? Because all of them are first order ODEs.
First order.
Okay. So displacement, stress, velocity. These also all are first order, but you are having 3 variables. U is there, velocity is there, then stress is there actually. Okay. Now here this displacement is fine, but here all of them are second order. In space, even in time also. So higher order derivatives comes. Now here you are having a second order. Then in terms of displacement, that is in time. Then you are having a first order with the sigma itself. So now which is the best? So the best one is you followed it, the velocity stress formulation, because everything is a first order ODE, and it is very easy to solve it in a finite difference framework. Okay, so this you have to remember. So now so the next class what we will do is we will start our velocity stress formulation, and next class our full class is we will concentrate on the dispersion. Okay, this is a very the problematic thing in our all the numerical calculations. So generally if you take elastic medium, say there is no chance of dispersion. Okay, but same elastic medium, if you implement in the finite difference format, say there you will automatically find that there will be a dispersion comes into picture. See, like for example, if the wave is propagating like this, say, okay, so you are having a wave like this. So now after some point of time, if it is an elastic medium, say, so the wave has to be like this itself. So the same wave, you know, there is no change in the shape, nothing is there, okay, because it's a, there is no dispersion, there is no viscous things in our medium. But if the same elastic problem, if you try to do it in a finite difference format, the solutions will be like this. You can easily, after some time, say, okay, so you will see like this, and some type of, you know, the wiggles will come actually here also. You followed some small, you know, the wiggles may come up like this actually. So this is what we call as, you know, the dispersion or a numerical error. Okay, so how to avoid this dispersion and how to select delta t, how to select this delta x, delta y, and then delta z. Okay, so this we will discuss in our next class. Okay, so fine. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. So if you have anything, you can ask me, you know. See, as already I told you, whatever I am showing you, see, all of them are available in the textbook I have shared you, right?